Hey, welcome to the Best Gay Sex Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Trevor Hoppe. Today's episode is called Survivor. And we're going to get to the guest hosts today. We have a special treat for you in store with two Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence talking today about their experiences. And we'll get to that in a second. But I just want to preface, because today's a little bit special and a little bit different, because I recorded this interview almost a year ago, and I've been turning it over in my head since then, thinking about what I wanted to say about it. Because at the end of Viva L'Amour's story, you know, she talks a lot about her experiences as a sexual assault survivor. And that's something I've struggled to think about, as many of us do, for a long time. Because it's not a term I necessarily felt drawn to or identified with, this term survivor. But this past year, I've been reflecting a lot on things that happened to me when I was younger. And there are blocks of time where I really don't remember what happened. But I know that there were situations that were not ideal and were probably deeply problematic, to say the least. And there were also situations that, you know, confronted with really thinking about now as an adult, looking back, that certainly were not consensual. And so I had to think about this term survivor and realize that I look back on the stuff that I went through and just reflecting on the fact that I'm still here. And if you've been through that kind of trauma, you know what that means. To realize that you're a survivor. Just looking back on the stuff and the trauma and the sketchy situations sometimes that you went through. You are a survivor, right? I am a survivor. Just acknowledging that has been a challenge. So I want to preface today's episode by just saying that this podcast has focused a lot on the good of sex, you know, the pleasure, the joy, the community. Really, there are many good things about sex and sexuality, very human things. But the show has tended to focus on the good stuff because we get so much of the bad stuff 24/7, the stigma, you know, the homophobia as queer people. Those messages surround us, right? But today I have to take a detour to focus on some of the bad stuff too, because it wouldn't really be the best gay sex, right? Without, you know, the worst is really trivializing here. I don't mean to say that sexual assault is really sex at all. It's something else. It's violence. And so this episode is a moment to pause and think about those bad things. But I just want to say how grateful I am for the ability to share this experience and to share it with two beautiful people. Sister Taint a Virgin, our guest host today, interviewing Sister Viva L'Amour. They are two Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, a organization that started in San Francisco. You may recognize their nun-like habits that have been dragified and made fabulous. And that's kind of their aesthetic because they grew out of the AIDS crisis wanting to help people. And that's what they continue to do today. That's their mission, really, to help people, and particularly queer people, but all communities, really. Their work transcends identity because they are just they're miracle workers, really. They just do fabulous works of service for the community. And that's why I wanted to have them on here today, because I just admire them so much, the sisters. If you don't know them and you don't know their work, really, please look into it and support their cause. Go to their events if you're in San Francisco. Certainly, their Easter festivities are well known. If you're aware of them, you know what I mean. I'll put some pictures up here on the video. Anyways, I don't want to belabor the point anymore because there's so much more to this episode than just what I said. But But I wanted to preface today's episode with that, reflection myself. And now I turn it over, thank you for your patience, to our guest host today, Sister Tana Version, speaking with Sister Viva L'Amour.
Sister Viva L'Amour, welcome to the Best Gay Sex Podcast.
Thank you. It's very cool to be here. It's an honor. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad you're here. As one of my mentors and big sisters within the process, I thought it'd be lovely to have a nice little chat with you. Given that the sisters have this long and varied history with sexuality, getting sex education materials out there, I felt like this was a perfect way of doing a deeper dive into your personal experiences.
Totally. And I also, like, behind the scenes, like, you and I have like a sort of professional connection.
Very true.
To sexual health as well, which I'm sure we'll kind of touch on.
A nice little dive into.
Yeah.
So the sisters had our origin here in San Francisco, but I'd love to hear more about your origin story. Where did you grow up?
Sure. Yeah. I actually grew up in San Francisco also. I'm a little younger than the sisters, but not by much. I grew up in way out in the Richmond. I grew up in like a Russian Orthodox household, which was, pretty conservative.
Mm-hmm.
My parents like Reagan Republicans and very much like, do what the church says. And that's changed a lot. My brother also is queer, and he's 11 years younger than me. So between Bush 2's like war in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the DNC pushing Bernie Sanders out, and my brother coming out, this is like a weird confluence of things. My parents became Democrats.
Wow.
It's
okay.
like such a weird, they're such pacifists. My dad's brother was drafted and in the Vietnam War, and that I think had a really big impact on him.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that, like, my dad just sort of realized why would I hold this kind of fake prejudice against my kids?
Yeah.
Because it definitely was affecting our relationship.
Yeah.
And I think if I can just kind of venture to guess, like, I don't think he wanted that same thing to happen with my brother, because they had a pretty strong relationship, even though he was really young. So
When did you come out to your brother?
I came out, I was kind of outed. I was outed. This shows my age. I was outed by a reply all to a group email forward.
Wow. Okay.
Funny email forward that were really big in the 90s. This guy that I was like, I was like 15. So this guy that I was like hanging out with and kissing, he replied all with just this, like, love letter basically. And it went to everyone, like everyone in my family and my friends. And it was definitely a moment, way to like bust out of the closet.
Yeah.
But my brother was only 5. So, he's 4. He was actually 4.
Mm-hmm.
So there wasn't like a huge awareness.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think my parents wanted me to hide it.
Mm-hmm.
They did from other family members, which is a whole nother podcast episode about how our family's elders often don't actually care, and our parents like weaponize them to keep us sort of in the closet or repressed or whatever. But yeah, my brother didn't really know, and actually I sometimes feel bad about this. My brother actually was in the closet, and I outed him. I had lunch with my mom at Chow in the Inner Sunset. Rest in peace. And I was like, I was like, Mom, I have something to tell you. Let's have lunch. And I was like, Timmy's gay, and he's hiding it, and it doesn't feel healthy that he's hiding it, because he was posting on MySpace, again, my age.
Yeah.
Posting on MySpace kind of drama, like relationship drama. And I'm like, this is something that I feel like a parent would be helpful to like step into. And I don't know how like great that decision was, but I mean, it was helpful because Timmy, and because I knew what it was like to come out. I knew what it was like to hide and then to be just busted out of the closet. It went in my high school life, at least, it completely changed everything. I was the only out gay kid in a class of 30, in a school of 3,200 students.
Wow.
And like, that was a really bizarre experience. And, pivoting into like, or making the connection to sex and sexuality, I grew up watching, content on movies and TVs where like high school kids are like making out and like hooking up, and like that wasn't an option for me. And some of the private schools had like kids that were out, but in public schools in the '90s, late '90s, like it wasn't progressive.
Right.
Like people think growing up in San Francisco is like this, amazing bastion of progressivism. So maybe for adults, but for kids at the time, it wasn't. But the irony is my school was. And when I came out, we did a lot of work. I started a GSA. I mean, there was all this stuff that happened. I was kind of an activist from the get-go. I did condom distribution. That's how I connected with a lot of people. I met people that way.
Amazing.
And I realized that like when people don't have anything to hold over me, you have power. You reclaim that power. And people got that memo.
Yeah.
People were like, well, why would I mess with this guy? So that was an interesting, just kind of like, so going back to, having access to like making out with boys, as if I didn't have that like at all. And because I didn't have access to like those private school kids, there wasn't a way to connect with them. Like being in public school, in San Francisco, there's 3 school systems. There's that you belong to, and it says everything about you.
Okay.
The public school system, the Catholic school system, and the parochial, like the private, not parochial, but the private school system. And, this is why when you meet a San Franciscan, the first thing they ask you is what school did you go to? Because you learn everything about them with just that answer. And, I went to kind of like a janky high school. I am grateful for it because it exposed me to so many different types of people. I made so many just bizarro friends. It taught me how to build commonality with people. It taught me how valuable having like a diverse friend group is. But it did not afford me access to cute boys.
Got it.
So,
So in the absence of having access to these cute boys, how did you ultimately end up learning about sex?
Yeah, so good question. I have always been really sexual, like ever since I was a kid. And like I remember my grandmother remarried after my grandfather died, and she had her second husband. I guess in my mind he was like fit. And like I remember thinking, and we're talking, I'm like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
I remember thinking like that's hot. And I also remember like watching wrestling, International Mail, back when that catalog actually came to your house. Like if you know, you know. And it's I've always felt like sexual. I've always felt sex positive. I've always felt kind of progressive in my attitude towards sex. And so in a sense, that's kind of how I learned, was just through like attraction and feeling normal about it. I think for a while I was made to feel like this is bad, this is bad. I will say one thing about growing up in San Francisco is maybe your peers, like the kids, are not helpful, but I was in an environment where people were like okay with it.
Got it.
And I knew that. Even though I wasn't going to the Castro when I was 8 or 9, I still had an understanding that existed.
Yeah.
Or that we had neighbors down the street who were like, had a gay cousin or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, so it, in that sense, it buffered it a little bit. The other thing I would say, I remember like, I like tried on a condom just by myself when I was like 9 or 10, because I was like, what's this?
Right.
I don't even know how I got to go there. Who knows? And then the other way, I think functionally, the way I learned about sex was the library, because the San Francisco Public Library is amazing. It is an institution like just unparalleled. I'm a big library fan. And I actually just rented something from the library on my way here.
Amazing.
On the app. But they had in the young adult section, they had books about sex and how to have sex, and it included queer people. And that's what I mean by kind of the city still was there, even though my neighborhood wasn't, or my school wasn't. And so I remembered, like, I learned how to like clean your butthole from a little book at the Anza branch. That book is still there. But I mean, that's like, I think of that book actually periodically, because it was like, that was it. That was the thing that I was like, oh, these are the mechanics. Like, this is how this works. Because up until then I'd seen like, pictures, it's all in your head. the other thing, so that's really functionally how I learned about sex. The first time I had any sort of like sex, I was, oh my God, the first time I had sex was when there was a school trip to London. It sounds fancier than it was. And because the drinking age 18 in the UK at the time probably still is, and I had a debit card because we had debit cards here.
Yeah.
They didn't have those then, and so I convinced them it was a credit card, and so therefore I was 18, and so I got into Limelight. Was that a bar? It was something like that, the church one.
Okay.
Or maybe it was Heaven. Anyway, it was one of the bars in London, and I met this guy. I met two people. I met the person who ended up becoming my first boyfriend.
Okay.
And I met this other guy who I ended up fucking behind a church. Like totally, I don't know if we used a condom or not. I mean, this was my first time having sex.
Yeah.
And it was like kind of wild. And so was it great? But what's funny about it is we finished and then these like two cops come running down the alley, like right by where we were. And like, we got to go. And I go home and I'm like, my mom's like sleeping in our hotel room because she was on the trip with me. And I'm like, it was, girl. But that kind of speaks to how I was sexually, I mean, there was never any like limit to stuff. Like it never felt, and that kind of comes to play in a kind of darker way, I think, as I got older. But I never felt like anything was off the table. And that's how that happened. So that was my like crash course.
Got it.
And then from there, it'd be like hooking up with people here and there. And I had a boyfriend, the guy I met in London. He moved out to San Francisco. Oh, he did a long distancing for a while. And girl, that sex was amazing because we would fight all the time. And also he was gone for so long.
Okay.
And so every time he came into town, it was like fireworks.
Got it.
It was amazing.
Of course.
It was definitely not a healthy relationship. It lasted 5 years and it ended very abruptly. With me having a full like 90s or 80s, like, woman in the kitchen moment and like, I'm leaving. And then just like left, over the weekend, grabbed all my stuff from the house while he was gone. But I also had a guy that I was like, kind of my boyfriend, but not really. And he lived in Santa Cruz, and it's actually why I moved to Santa Cruz, because I needed to get away from my parents, and I knew someone there, and it was a cool town. So, and it's kind of funny, like in hindsight, I don't know how I feel about the fact that I kind of had these two guys who didn't like each other, and they knew about each other, and it was kind of a weird situation. And neither of them, the sex was what I would consider now to be terribly healthy. It just I mean, it's like, I don't even know how to describe it, but it just didn't feel like super fulfilling. It always felt a little like seedy.
Okay.
I mean, it was good in that we had a decent relationship and there was like passion to it, but something about it, and maybe it's because I like was technically part of this other relationship that felt more serious. But that was an interesting, I mean, that was like my first time bottoming was with that guy. And that was like a fine experience, but he also, I think like this is like no shade to this guy because we're still friends. Like he's actually a really, really great guy. I mean, total sweetheart, difficult to date. And I think too, his idea of like what healthy or good sex was so discordant with mine but we were kind of stuck together. We kind of had this like codependent thing going on, and it was impossible for me to break away from that in a way that was like healthy or safe, not safe, healthy. And it just was weird, and it was weird. It was just kind of weird. And I still like tried hooking up with other people during that time, but Santa Cruz is kind of like my high school. There's just like, unless you go to the university, your access to people, is minimal, especially because it's a college town. So people are strict on carding.
Yep.
And I was there 18, 19, 20.
Got it.
So it's like, and this is also before the apps. This is like
Mhm.
even Craigslist wasn't super big in Santa Cruz, to my recollection. At least I hadn't found it yet. I had a really good fulfilling life there, but sex was not really a part of it.
Mhm.
And like something we'll probably talk about too is I'm in recovery, and when I do a long form share at meetings, my Santa Cruz thing, I kind of like blow through that also.
Mm.
It's just it's like this weird blip in my life where things just kind of were like milk toast,
Okay.
like just everything just kind of was there,
Mhm.
and I made it through unscathed for the most part. Yeah, it's a long ass answer. Sorry.
You mentioned that there was a discordance between kind of what you conceptualized as like a healthy sex life and what your partner did. Has that evolved or changed over time with you?
What my healthy method concept is? I don't know. Maybe. I guess I haven't had like a real, like checklist
Okay.
of what healthy sex is. I think that's really what good sex is to me, is when it kind of breaks outside of the box a little bit. And it's tends to be more about intimacy and like emotional connection,
Okay.
even hookups. That's what I would like try and achieve.
Yeah.
And with him, I think we both were trying really hard to have this like open relationship
Okay.
moment. And I was just so young and new and like didn't even have like didn't even know how to relationship, period.
Yeah.
That it was like, I think really hard. He was older. He's like 9 years older, 8 years older. So there's that, and I was coming in at like 18. And we met on planetapp.com. So we keep dating myself. So I don't know. I mean, this is an interesting question because it's like, did I ever have time to form my baseline? You know what I mean? Like, did I ever have a moment to be like, this is what Viva's. Anyway, spoiler alert. Viva's, like, basic core definition of like healthy sex or a healthy relationship is, which maybe speaks to kind of how I feel now, where it's very just kind of all over the place. It's a little unanchored. It is now because I'm in a relationship that's monogamous, and so there is just by default a sort of definition to it.
Okay.
But even then, sometimes I feel like there's room in that to sort of play around, figure stuff out.
So that space that's kind of in between that really helps you kind of push outside of those boxes sometimes.
Yeah.
That feels new and exploratory, and also helps you kind of define your own personal boundaries in a way that, again, makes you feel kind of more safe and comfortable at times. But
totally. And I'm kind of a chaos monkey. And so like, I mean, that's part of it too, is I like the impulsivity of things. But, I also we all need grounding to like survive. And so maybe that's kind of where I find where in my hookups, because I didn't really date after I broke up with my first boyfriend. In like hookups, there was a lot of chaos around how we met. And then the sex itself would always be my goal would always be to form this like intense connection.
Okay.
Which was not necessarily super healthy. Because I would sometimes then make that connection and then push people away very quickly, which didn't feel very fair.
You mentioned enjoying being a chaos monkey, and kind of having kind of a little bit of chaotic sexual practices. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of that?
Totally. I feel like there's like two ways to answer this. One of them is, I already mentioned that I'm in recovery, and I've been in and out of my program for the program that I, am active in it took me 16 years is kind of what I say, to finally like get sober and clock some time. And during that time and leading up to that time, I definitely found myself in a lot of situations that should have been like red flags, that should have been like, hard stops, whether it was ending up in Walnut Creek and not like knowing the person or inviting folks over, like meeting people at a bar and inviting them over and it feeling, particularly unsafe and feeling that, having that feeling of like, I don't know the powerlessness of it,
Yeah.
to being in sexual situations which would escalate without consent. That happened a couple times. I'm a big guy. I'm a big sister. I'm a large person, and it takes a lot to really like, pin me down, for example. And it's not something that I'm like accustomed to. And it happened a couple times. And that, to me, those are the things that stand out to me. It's actually funny. I pulled some cards last night, some tarot cards, and around kind of just the general today. And I pulled the Knight of Swords and the Six of Coins, Pentacles, reversed, because that's my life. They're always reversed. And it was, basically the takeaway that I gleaned from it was talking about sex as power, unbalanced sex, transactional sex, consent. And I think that this topic weighs on me more than I really let it. I don't talk about it a lot. I don't talk about it with my therapist. I don't talk about it with my, with my program peers. It's not, I don't think it's because I have shame about it, but it may be a little bit, maybe that's because that's one of those things. It's one of the few things where I, thinking back to it, I was genuinely scared, and a lot of times the shit I would get into, passing out on a bulldozer, like walking home barefoot from South of Market to the Mission, those things didn't alarm me, even though they probably should. But for whatever reason, the sex stuff really was disconcerting to me. That being said, I mean, it's not all doom and gloom, right? I also had really amazing sex. I said I didn't date, but I did date this guy for a little bit in there that was like phenomenal, super balanced, like really healthy relationship. Arguably one of the healthiest relationships I'd been in until he dumped me. So it was both. Both were there, but like, definitely the more difficult things wore on me a lot. And what's, and they didn't stop me. He wasn't ultimately what took me out and got me in here for good was not around sex at all. Partly because I had established my relationship where, my husband and I are monogamous. Anyway, wow. Yeah. I don't think I've like, I've really gone down that road before. Yeah, there's one instance in particular that was super, super sketchy. And I think about it sometimes. And ultimately, like, I'm fine. It was fine. I think we even talked about it afterwards. But in the moment, I was like, it's the powerlessness, right? In recovery, we talk about our powerlessness. And, I think this was an example of having complete lack of power. And I am an Aries, I'm a Russian Aries. Like, I want to be in control. And it's really disconcerting to me when that is not the case. And it's interesting how like sex is one of those areas where power and control plays like almost like a disproportionate role to like what it is, if that makes sense. I feel like on paper, it feels naturally collaborative in general. But I guess what I'm saying is the power and control have is disproportionate. That makes sense. So, and I just was in situations where that power was overwhelming.
Yeah. Both as a recipient and as someone who's kind of your power is being taken away from you.
Right. Yeah. And that's going back to like all sorts of stuff that I've uncovered in therapy and again, another podcast. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of dots that connect there.
You were out there having somewhat messy, chaotic sex at times. At the same time, you were also working in sexual health, sex education. How did you kind of balance, your personal life with kind of what you were putting out there professionally?
Yeah, I think it goes back to kind of what we were saying earlier about I was always very sexual. It was something that I was comfortable talking about. None of it was taboo. Nothing in sex is taboo to me. I mean, truly, and it never was. I may not do it. I may not enjoy it, but it's like, whatever, I don't care. I think that sometimes kind of got me in trouble, but also it informed my experience as a sexual health counselor. Because when someone walked into the room and we were doing like an HIV test and I had that time between testing and result, I made it clear, I think, whether it was through body language or whatever, that like anything's on the table, And it informed my experience a little bit too. There's something self-serving about, being in that position as well. It's healing in a way. But I think it maybe was the counterbalance. It's like in my personal life, everything was kind of falling apart most of the time. But when I was a clinician, when I was in clinic, I had my shit so together and was super present for these people. I had like a clear message. It's like I got to act out that part of me that like was there but wasn't coming out. And I loved it. I mean, I loved being that resource. I mean, I built sort of a reputation where, especially coming into being a sister, like I loved being that resource even outside of, the clinic. That people knew they could text me or call me, or if we ran into each other on the street. When I was in sister phase, people knew who I was. And that was really great. Maybe it was a bit of an ego thing, but I would like to think it was more of truly just altruistic. I wanted people to be safe. And maybe that's it too. I was finding myself in these really weird situations, and I didn't want other people to go there. When people told me their stories and they were rough, I'm like, don't do it. Like, let's talk about it. And also I could relate. I mean, the part of being a peer counselor is that I could connect with people
Definitely.
on the good and the bad. And I saw my friends too. You see your friends come in and there you are.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Have you ever interacted with clients that you saw in the clinic out then as a sister?
Probably, but as you know, as a sister, we have kind of this like magic cloaking device that happens too. And it's like, and this is, I think, also it's a provider thing and it's a sister thing where you can just like, I am not here. These are not the droids you're looking for, right? Like that's what my husband calls it. And it's just like, we can kind of disappear. I mean, I would have like conversations with guys and they had no idea who I was. And I've got a voice, like I've got a very distinctive voice and that's fine. And if they did recognize it's like not a big deal. It didn't bother me at all, Yeah.
You said that kind of as a counselor, like you were totally comfortable talking about sex and like anything was on the table. As a sister, we're often called into kind of situations where we're kind of outside of comfort zones and holding space with individuals around that. Were there ever conversations that were more of a sexual nature when you were out as a sister?
Yeah. So one of the things I thought about before this was, my line between my male presenting person and Sister Viva for a long time was very thin. So kind of, I think in answering this question, yes, there's been instances where as a sister in phase, I've, done some sort of ministry or holding space or, I mean, definitely at bars. I mean, I love bar ministry. I still do. And, having moments with those people that are in heartbreak or in, indecision or they shouldn't go, but you know what I mean? Like we can objectively say like, go home. There were definitely a lot of those. And it's just a lot of like listening and redirecting. I think as sister is what I've learned in my many, many years of being a sister is we just listen and sort of the rest takes over a lot of the time. I've left that part of me that wants to kind of like, I don't think I've ever been a fixer, but I left that part of me that low-key wants to fix and just wants to hang out and listen. And I feel like I'm like that in my secular life as well, The thing that I was going to say is like there are a lot of people that knew Viva, still to this day, that only call me Viva when I'm Greg. And I still felt like I was sistering with those people.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if I brought up the example of the Comfort and Joy party. Did we talk about this?
Yeah.
Okay. So it was talking about being sober again. My first time ever being sober, I was 23. And I was asked by one of the folks that run Comfort and Joy, who I'd known as Viva, very, very clearly Viva, if I could work the door, because I was like the sober person.
Hey, can you tell us what Comfort and Joy?
Yes, sorry. Comfort and Joy is a Burning Man camp that is super sex positive, has a play space in their camp, really large camp. And they also throughout the year host kind of fairy adjacent, like radical fairy adjacent parties, play parties, fundraisers, just kind of everything. neon is their thing.
Yeah.
A lot of neon for us in Dayglow.
Yes.
And very, very sweet people. Very sweet people. And I was like, yeah, I'll work the door, sure. And that was like its own little funny. The cops came at one point. I mean, it was like just a whole experience. But when my time was done, I went down into the play area and I ran into a friend, someone I knew. He knew me really as like Viva more than anything. And we ended up like, sex parties, I could never navigate. I think it was just too much energy. Like I had a hard time navigating like where my role was. I also was extremely, extremely self-conscious and insecure. And that was a big part of that plays into my sex choices as well, like a lot, going back to the Knight of Swords. But anyway, this guy, we ended up, he's like, oh, Sister Viva. And like, so it's like, the point is like, I was in this like gray space, and we ended up like talking for a long time and just became friends. That was it. That was like the moment where like all of a sudden we became friends. It's almost as if we transited from him being friends with Viva to him being friends with Viva. That was like the connection that happened. He made this dress.
Oh,
yeah.
Amazing.
He's an amazing designer. So that, I mean, that's like sort of my favorite stories where it's like, I was very much Greg, I was probably naked, but it was like that Viva led a lot of the time, especially in my younger days when I was a lot more active and kind of on the scene. But even still, like I said, I mean, it's like, I took a long break, just like history lesson. I took a long break from the order to take care of myself. And even after that long break, people still know me as Viva.
Right. Yeah. How has it been back as a sister now and as a new form of Sister Viva?
That's great. It's so different. And it's been really amazing. Like to give people a sense, like as sisters, we kind of get side names, like side hustles, but names. And one of mine was Drunky Pants the Sad Clown. So that kind of like sums it up. She was a hot mess and really fun. Like I was never a mean drunk. Like I was never like mean or a cruel, but I would get really sad. And so Viva back then, super active, getting put into cabs before events even started, but still, fun, friendly, effervescent. Now I'm older and wiser and more stable. And I think that what I bring now, I talked about listening. I definitely am much more of someone who my idea of holding space is different. My idea of good ministry is different. You and I are super close in how we like to interact with the communities we work with. And, it's people refer to as like ministry of presence. And for me, it's just going out and being able to validate people's existence, hold space, listen, show up. That's where I'm coming from. And those are things I could not do if I was chasing the next drink, chasing the next baggie, whatever the case would be, trying to make it to the next party. Now I'm super comfortable. Just like on Pride weekend, we were kind of bopping around and we were at this one spot at the Eagle in this outdoor area. And I like didn't want to leave because it's a bar, but like I didn't want to leave because the connections we were making with people were so fun and cool and like meaningful and authentic. It's like, well, this is like what this is it.
Yeah.
Like this is it. So yeah, it's definitely Viva's very different. I had this is a little side note that there's a sister who I pissed off one year. We had a formal event and we had to wear dress blocks or whatever. I don't know. And blacks are formal blacks.
Yeah.
Sure, whatever.
Yeah.
Black and white. And I was like, oh yeah, watch this. And so I rented a panda like plushie outfit from Costumes on Hate and pinned a veil to it, put little lipstick on it, and showed up to Yerba Buena Center for the Arts. And like, I don't think she was ever going to talk to me ever again. Like, she was so angry. She was so angry. And I came back this time, and we have like this amazing relationship because now I can, now I can. She sees that like this chaos was actually kind of funny, and that I needed to get through that to be here. And now she came up to me recently. We were at some event, and it was like, oh, Easter. We're at Easter's. We throw this gigantic Easter in the park celebration. And she said, Viva, you're always just the calm in the storm.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yes, I've arrived. I did it. And that's great. That to me, that's really important, you know, because that's who I want to feel that way. That's how I try and be in my life in general, as Viva or elsewhere. But I mean, we live in such a chaotic time, and things are rough right now. And if we can show up and pull the heartbeat down a couple beats per minute, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned this idea of kind of sisters being in this kind of liminal space of kind of like as members of the community, as spiritual advisors, which dovetails very nicely with kind of work as a counselor as well. But how do you navigate blending Sister Viva with Greg and being like sexual individual?
Sure. Viva was never really, Viva loved to be sexy. I was also like, you know, pencil thin twink. And I loved being sexy, like my dress, my makeup, that was my brand, but I never got it as Viva. And I think part of it is because I was messy. Part of it is because I look like this. And I kind of resented that because I think it played into my insecurities. You know, I wasn't able to differentiate. People don't want to sleep with a clown from people that want to sleep with Greg. And that I think was hard on me and would kind of even feed into how like I wanted to get in an evening. I've maybe hooked up like once or twice in sister face, maybe, but it just never felt like it was on the table. But you know, like when it's all about like the energy and the confidence. Like I'm sure if I was in a better place and could like work it out, it would have worked out. But like I was just never in that place. I was barely in that place when I was like, you know, hot twink. I was assuming I was hot. But yeah, so it especially didn't work in sister face. And the type of people we attract as sisters, and this is like no shade, but like the type of people we attract as sisters when we're out and that are feeling very like sexual, sometimes it can feel a little, I find sometimes it can feel a little like scary.
Yeah.
Not scary, but like unhealthy. You know, there's this like, I don't know if it's like fetishization or maybe it's the power thing. Like maybe people think because we look like this, they can want the power. Right. It's something about it. Like it reads weird to me.
Yeah.
And so that's, you know, it's kind of like I shot myself in the foot because I didn't like it when people approached us, but then I like didn't have the confidence to be like, hey, let's make this happen. Yeah. The irony is my husband and I met at Magnet, the clinic that we worked at. And that's where I was a volunteer. And he was a volunteer there too. And we kind of like awkwardly, you know, would like flirt and stuff. And then at Critical Mass, a few months into us knowing each other, I was in Fake. So I would ride my bike in Critical Mass, which is the monthly, gigantic, super chaotic bicycle ride, freeform bicycle ride through San Francisco. And I would do it in Face sometimes. And I have a tattoo on my leg. And he recognized it because he knew I was a sister, but didn't know like what I looked like. Of course. And he recognized the tattoo. And so it's funny because we actually met kind of when I was in Face. So I'm talking shade about like the clown. They're like, we're obsessed. But like he totally was, you know, and that was it. That was like really, I mean, I took off my face before we like did anything, but it's messy. It's so messy. I wear glitter on my lips. It's so messy. So messy. But yeah, that's kind of a funny irony, I guess. And he's been, you know, talking about, you know, just to maybe tie this into that and sex. Like I don't know if we've ever had sex while I was in Face. It's not like a kink. It's just like, I think because we know we can wait 20 minutes, you know, and like take the face off. But, you know, he definitely like, he appreciates kind of when Viva gets sexy too, though. So it's still something I try and like exude when I want to exude that like confidence and like, you know, kind of traditional sexiness. I always joke with him like a 90s career woman, soaking her Newports. But I appreciate because he does validate that too. He does get it. He understands like kind of like the drag and the clowniness of it can still be like kind of like, oh, that's so good.
Right.
So
he met you at your earlier stages of Viva, which is kind of the more messy version, the more chaotic one version. And now obviously you're still together 16 years later.
16 years, like 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
How has your dynamic with him shifted and kind of this dynamic with sobriety?
Yeah, I think God, this is such a long answer. He and I have been through so much together. I mean, really a lot. Like I had a really significant, because of my drinking, health scare where I was in a coma for a month. He put me through 2 rehabs. I've been through maybe 3 psych units. I mean, it's a lot. It's really a lot. And the fact that he's just been this like stalwart advocate for me or champion for me is just like completely bonkers. And I, when I got sober this time around, I have 4 years now, and there was a lot of this, oh, I like owe him everything. Oh, I'm not good enough for him. Oh, like, and I had to like get out of that cycle because I think that was impacting like sex. It stuff started feeling, just in general, stuff started feeling a little transactional. And 6 of coins reversed. Stuff started feeling like really not really, but sort of transactional. Like everything, there was this like self-imposed power imbalance, and it did definitely affect. I think it definitely affected our sex life. And as I have, continued to stay sober and continued to work on my mental health, and we've continued to work on our relationship, my confidence that I am like an equal in this relationship, which I always was. He never was like, oh, you got to catch up. There was never any of that. Has allowed things, in a fist of time, has allowed things to kind of reconnect, including sexually. It feels there's more parity between us now. And this has been, I mean, it's been good for a while. It was never like terrible, but they're definitely, and I was also like, I mean, in my drinking, I weighed 250 pounds at one point, and I'm like 200 now. And, I was very overweight. I felt really bad about my body. I had like terrible acne. I mean, I was not necessarily a conventionally attractive person at the time. So that played into things too. It's like, I felt like I didn't deserve a seat at the table, the sex table. Whereas now I feel better about my body. And, I mean, there's so much to that answer. But, I think really he is just super grateful that this is who I am now.
Yeah.
I mean, I told you we went through a lot, and like he, I think he just, I mean, I can't speak for him, but I mean, I think just that we're both grateful that I'm here right now because our relationship is so much stronger. And, I mean, we love each other, and it's so painful to know that you put something through all that stuff. And I'm grateful that he's always approached this from a place of like, it's okay, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. When you're out as sister, and you bump into someone who reminds you of that baby Viva, potentially in a kind of state of crisis or teetering towards that almost, what in your interactions do you hope they kind of leave with or take away with?
Two-prong answer. One is, I remember when I was coming up, what was unhelpful was when these queens were like bitchy about it. Like the queens that were doing the same thing or had done the same thing, like making me feel so awful about it. And I was great at making myself feel awful, and like that was really, and I still know who those sisters are, and I can see them still doing it. And it's like, those sisters also bring amazing things to the table, right? I mean, there's a reason they're still around and do amazing things, but initiation's a touchy thing, and people handle it very, very differently. And, I learned, my sort of take on life in general is like, don't do the things you didn't like. That's kind of how my husband and I operate. It's like when we've had really terrible relationships, like I kind of glossed over that first boyfriend, but we really are like, you can't think of the word. True north is don't do the things that sucked. That were unhealthy or bad or dangerous or whatever. Don't do those things. We're going to be fine. And it's kind of worked out. So I think for sistering, I have a similar mindset. It's like, don't do those things. But in the context of like, don't do those things for the other initiates. I actually had a pretty decent like initiate, like coming up process. It was fast. It was super fun. I was surrounded by a good group of nuns. And I want that for other new sisters. Like I have another little sister right now, and it's funny because I kind of found myself doing what I remember other people doing to me, and just not being present, being dismissive, and, that's not helpful. And so this same sister also has had some pretty intense negotiations with drug use in the last couple of weeks. And, so what I found myself doing last week when I saw them was just, again, it's that like listening.
Yeah.
And this is someone I know, and they trust me. It's someone I have a personal relationship with also, so we can talk a bit more freely. But I think, in the context of like substances, I can speak from my experience and kind of talk about that with them and then apply it to being a sister. And, my takeaway and what I want sisters to really think about is when you are super fucked up and at an event, you're not connecting. And for me, again, as I've said, like my ministry is connection, and I can't be a effective sister when I'm disassociated or like checked out or distracted. And that happens to me even now. Like we were on the back patio and that was happening to me. I'm like, there's nothing happening here. This connection is weird. The signals are off. Like this does not feel good. And so we just left.
Yeah.
And that's what we can do. But when you're drunk or high on K or super stoned, like do the drugs. I don't care. Like I love drugs, but don't try and be the best sister you can be because it's probably not going to work. You don't have a choice of saying, I'm going to walk away from the situation because it's just there all the time. So that's all. I think just like letting sisters like have space to kind of, but also letting sisters have space to mess up.
Totally.
I mean, that's part of the process.
You mentioned this kind of ministry of connection as like an extension of ministry of presence, it being such an important aspect of what it means to be a sister for you. How does that translate into kind of having some of the best sex that you have?
Yeah, I think that in general, I move through life trying to find those connections. Like in my professional world, that's what I do. In sistering, as we talked about, that's what I do. And even with friends, like I find that I try and be a good friend, not by, necessarily going to lunch all the time or blah, 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 but it's really being the friend that's like checking in. I heard someone say that San Franciscans are really good at this. Like all the native San Franciscans they've met are the friends that'll text you out of the blue and just say, how's it going? So maybe that's it. But you know what I mean? Like those are the important things to me, is just having that, like pick up a phone and call someone. So I feel like it sort of does translate to sex. I mean, when I think of like some of the best sex I've had is really centered around having that like next level connection. Like maybe the actual physics, the mechanics of the sex weren't amazing, or there weren't a lot of them, maybe it was just like a hand job. But like when you are able to make that like cosmic connection, but when you're able to make that connection with someone and have that like alignment, that is hot. That to me is like really amazing. And it's just, you can't beat, there's no rivalry. There's no other, I'm going to say, there's not much better.
Yeah.
So then the inverse of that is when you would go from Craigslist hookup and end up at the top of Castro and like Alvarado, and you walk in and it is like nothing. It was just like nothing. And you try it and the guy's like super hot and you know what I mean? Like all that stuff. And it's like, there's just nothing there for me. I don't know if it's because I lived in Santa Cruz for 3 years or like what, but it's just, there's the hippie part in me. I think it also plays to like, I feel like I'm also a very spiritual person and always have been. And like, I can look at porn if I want a hot guy. You know what I mean? But if I want to have like a meaningful sexual connection with someone, there needs to be some like meat. There's a Russian word is the zhizn, and I don't really know what it means, but it's kind of like it's like meat. There's like there's content to it. There's like does that make sense? And that's what I want. That's what I would always want. And I would say, thinking back to like the best. What's funny is I talked about the guy that was the consent problem, that one guy. There was all, but at the same time, it kind of danced around this connection also, again, therapy, another podcast. But it like danced around like that too, in a way, because there was this like weird connection there, which maybe is what made it even more of like a violation of trust. I don't know. But yeah, and I think that's like, that to me is the real meat and potatoes.
Is there anything that you do that can help kind of spark that connection or kind of help and ensure that it happens?
Yeah, I think, I mean, you can even lead, it's like, you can even physically guide it, even though it's sort of more mental and spiritual. I think when, in having sex, and this is the case, like, with my partner, with my husband, leading in like physical intimacy, slow physical intimacy. Like I thought always that fucking was like, let's go, like let's make it happen. Like, let's make it rough. Cause to me that was hot, and but then that connection kind of doesn't like happen that much. But being able to sort of like guide it with like that kind of slow physical intimacy is really helpful. Cause you start to like, it's like it warms up, picturing like a little ball of light, it gets warmer and warmer and warmer and brighter, and eventually you're like connected. I think also just having trust. I mean, that's a big part of it. The hookups that I had where that connection was felt, these were people that I had trust with. Even if I just met them, there's like, I feel like I'm a pretty decent, like I can read people pretty quickly. And so like, there's, you'd hit it off, right? I mean, this happens all the time with just our regular lives. And having that sense of trust, because then you're not worried about like how you look. You're not worried about like, if you're doing something right, it doesn't matter, because it's not necessarily the physical that matters anymore. Yeah.
Right. You have that space to kind of unwind and just be
totally
present.
Totally. Yeah. I will say that like one of the things that the downside was that I would sometimes get so connected to people, and I was in a place that like I was not able to date. We talked about this, and I, it would result in a lot of like kind of like shitty conversations and like kind of bad situations. And so it's like now I know, I mean, I'm not like meeting random guys on like Craigslist anymore, but it just in my regular life, like I've learned to be mindful of like, when this connection is made with someone, just to like treat it with respect.
You touched upon this kind of importance of connection and really kind of that trust that can be built. But looking about kind of the younger generation, people that are really seeking that and kind of having a difficult time finding that, what kind of advice or information would you kind of like to instill for them?
I think, at the risk of being like, these kids, Grandma Viva over here. I think authenticity is like the name of the game. And I think that is something we have, maybe not lost, but like we no longer have a great grip on, I think, in our overall culture period, but in, queer culture, to some extent. I mean, I've always been like a bit of a weirdo, and I think that allowed me to, ironically, be able to more freely make those connections because I wasn't like trying to like fit a box necessarily. I mean, I was in some sense because I wanted to be like fuckable, but I could navigate it. I can move into spaces just kind of being off. So I think in the context of like hookup apps, which I know is like kind of the main way people are meeting right now. I mean, it's entirely based on a persona. So how do you be authentic,
right,
when the person shows up at your door? And I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's just worth thinking about. It's like, how do you be authentic when the person shows up to your door when they're expecting, Sister Viva 69?
Right.
It's hard.
It is hard.
So what does that mean? Do you try and be more authentic on the apps? Well, then you don't get sex. So, there's a paradigm shift that would have to happen. So I think, I mean, I don't know, maybe a short answer is, I'm old school. I mean, I would cruise at bars, I would go to the park, whatever. I'm not saying go to the park, kids, like, but it's dangerous. But reconnecting IRL, I mean, this is like, we're saying this for everything in our country right now, right?
Yeah.
But like, it's true, like reconnecting with people in real life, trying to meet people in real life, you know, is, I think, really important. Like, it's really important, and it's the only way that those connections like can happen. I know that I have friends that have like met on like Grindr or Scruff or whatever, and they are like still together, and that's great, super awesome. They were able to do it. There's like two weirdos finding each other, you know. But like, I know for me, like, I would need to kind of do in person. And the thing is, like, in San Francisco at least, there's a lot out there. Like, there's more out there than I think people realize. You know, there's bars, sure. There's clubs, sure. But there's also, you know, like other interest groups, you know. People think it's crazy that my husband and I met volunteering, but we met because we had a common interest, and that was it. You know, and they'd be like, "Oh, that's not possible anymore." I'm like, it is. You know, it's totally possible. People do it all the time. You know, my straight friends do it all the time. You know what I mean? That's what's crazy. It's like we think that like we are able to make this happen. So I think like the short answer would be, you know, really trying to be more authentic, and it's easier to be authentic when you're in person. You can't hide as easily, and also like be weird. You know, like we're all a little weird. I mean, some people aren't, and whatever, good for you. But like, you know, all of us have a little weirdness to us, and that's okay. And that's like cool. That's the cool part.
Yeah.
That's like the cool part about you.
Right.
It's the part of you that's wearing exactly what you're supposed to wear, and like, you know, whatever. That's kind of like, you just kind of blend in.
Yeah.
Ironically.
Right.
Paradox. Blend on a paradox.
Yeah, I love embracing kind of your inner freak and kind of celebrating that as an authentic part of yourself, and really to help kind of, again, make yourself stand out. Because, right, like you go on those apps and it's just a wall of people that look almost identical to each other. And you can go so quickly fall into the like instant gratification of just kind of finding someone, checking it off the box. But it's like the people that stand out, the people that are authentically themselves, are the ones that you remember, and the ones that you're playing the longer game for those more intimate connections, which I think the sisters celebrate quite well as well.
Yes. It's true. It's true. Yeah.
In wrapping up, we like to kind of do a final segment of Sordid Lives and Untold Tales, or SLUT for short. What is the sluttiest thing you've ever done, sister?
I was supposed to prepare for this, and I forgot. The sluttiest thing I've ever, this is funny because it's not really slutty. It's just like, what the Dolores Park is this like, you know, institution of a park in San Francisco in the Mission. It's beautiful. It's like in movies. And, they were redoing it years and years ago, and they had a big trailer, you know, like a tractor trailer in the park. And I was so drunk. My boyfriend against the trailer in like the middle of 8 p.m. like Mission District, and it's totally viewable. Like everyone's there.
Yep.
Like I think back to this, and it's like, what was I doing? That's, I think, maybe kind of slutty. It's just more desperate than anything. But I think the sluttiest thing that I've done is, you know, this is like maybe more thirsty than slutty, but the first boyfriend that I talked about, we met in London, and then like the next day he was like, you know, let's meet up in like this other part of London that I didn't know London very well at the time. And I was like, where the am I going? I literally was like, am I going to get murdered? Like, it was possible. And I go out, we meet, we have like a great time. We make out all the time. I go, and that to me was slutty just because like the desperation, the like sheer, just like, I'll do anything. What makes it extra slutty is I missed dinner with my mom on our final night of our trip. And she's still, to this day, holds it over me. Anyway, slutty.
So good. Well, thank you, sister. It's always lovely chatting with you.
Thank you.
Always chatting about sex.
Yeah.
So if people want to learn more about the sisters, where would you direct them?
Yeah. So super easy website, www.thesisters.org. And you can read our bios, which is kind of fun too.
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay, thanks.
As always, thank you so much for listening. I really am grateful. If you're here, if you're still listening to this moment, you really are a fan, I guess. And I just really can't appreciate you enough. So thanks for sticking with me these 2 seasons. They've been a real pleasure. Till next time.